on if districts are able to seek exceptions above the index. In our case, if we needed to raise taxes above 5.1%, there are certain exceptions we could apply for, but to qualify to apply for those, you have to pass a preliminary budget, which essentially would have to be passed by January 31st. Taking a step back from that, unique because we received some of the accountability funds in the 2025 budget, the budget that was passed by our legislature in July. Part of the things they stuck onto that was if you received any of that accountability money, you cannot apply for exceptions. So won't really be focusing too much on that part of the process. We normally don't apply for exceptions here at the district. We have a couple of times in our past, but not something we would plan on doing next year anyway. But once again, right now the law says we wouldn't be able to do that. But wanting to give you some of that early information where we see salaries and benefits, those will be two of the key things that are helpful in those projections. Everything else is really just done based on history and a proposed increase in costs. So the actual items being bought or the services being needed, we're just projecting those numbers for projection's sake. As we get closer into February and March and actually gather the real information of what our departments need for the year and a better understanding what those things will cost in the coming year, we'll start to replace those projected figures with our actual figures. But once again, that won't happen until that March timeframe. Dr. Kepler, if you could scroll to the first page, just to that January 9th meeting, following up once again with reiteration of some of those longer based projects, updates on actual personnel needs and wants. As always, every year, we normally also have some personnel that we would like to add for the additional year. We'll start to give you information on those costs for that, and then determine what, if anything, the board would like for further information to determine if they would support these additional positions or not. In January, I'll be meeting with the departments. We call these technical assistance meetings, and it's really just to check in with all the departments and see if they need any help as they're finishing up and completing their budget process. You can go ahead to the next page. February 13th, coming back to the board and projecting some of our summer maintenance projects. This process is probably going to look a lot different this time, just because we have our major projects coming on. So conversely, there's probably going to be less other summer projects that we're going to be able to A, afford, and B, handle, just given all the things that are going to be going on during that period of time. So once again, that might look different than in the past. And once again, focusing on that personnel budget. Moving down to the March 13th meeting, that's when we'll bring in some of the departments again to present their budgets. And this format and schedule follows similar to last year, that we have curriculum, technology, buildings and grounds, transportation, and then kind of the catch-all support services, budget presentations in that meeting. And then our March 27th meeting, all the schools, special education, and athletics will present. This is all moving us once again, as we've done in prior years. Every committee meeting will have some sort of presentation. It won't just be the finance committee meeting that information is reviewed. It's the finance committee meeting, and then normally the meeting afterwards. Some of that's follow-up. If what we presented in the meeting before, if board members want to see additional information or something we haven't covered, we can get to those there. Like in prior years, we're looking to have our budget approved in early May. Our May 8th board meeting to approve the proposed budget. Per school code, that budget must be on display for 30 days prior to final adoption, and we would propose that June 12th. The requirement by school code is just to have the budget approved by June 30th. However, the closer we wait to June 30th, there is a process once the millage rate is approved to get that over to Keystone so that they can prepare taxes. The earlier we get that, the greater chance of the tax bills going out close to July 1st. If we're not doing it till our second meeting in June, that challenges that ability to get those bills out right away. Also, just leaving, I don't anticipate needing it here at this district, but also just leaving an additional meeting if for whatever reason we're not able to pass that budget on June the 12th. We have another opportunity to do that and still remain in compliance with school code. So any questions, comments, recommendations on the timeline? Thank you.
Mr. Prince, the second item, update on the 23-24 expenses and revenues.
So I think I've said this before, and it probably, we're very close to the end of the audit, but at the end of the day, the audit's not done until the report's issued. It is always a fluid process. What I'm presenting to you today is what I believe are the final numbers. As far as Mr. Drexler and I have been able to work through with our auditors, much back and forth in terms of different things, but I think we're really to the end of making our adjustments and then also making sure our adjustments are equal to what our auditors have, which you can hopefully understand is a bit of a process. Really just breaking down our summary for last year in a very simple format here, not really by departments, but by our objects. And the two biggest ones of our budget are salaries and benefits. Those two together make up about 65% of the dollars that we spend. As you can see, we spent about almost 98% of the funds that we budgeted. Salaries were under budget by approximately $650,000. This was due to two key areas. One being professional staff was under budget by approximately $315,000. That's about a little over 1.5% of the teacher's salary budget. And then another item that's it's been hard to budget for, specifically coming off COVID, not as much overtime, but subs, opt-outs, those other types of things that are ancillary that just come and go or used as needed during the school year. From a budgetary perspective, in my history, I've had a lot of luck looking at how we spent those dollars in the past and projecting those in the future. Unfortunately, COVID caused essentially information from 2020 to 2022 isn't as useful in making those adjustments because of what we were doing to make school happen during those periods of time. This was an item nice to see that we were spending less money on our subs, and we'll use that information as we prepare our budget for 25-26 to learn from that as well. Hopefully we can reduce those costs. You have to be mindful we have increased that rate, so there's a little bit of those things that will continue to be working in tangent. Our benefits, and I actually done a review of this in a different way and was just really looking at solely at how much we had paid for medical benefits. And this line item includes our retirement, taxes, Social Security, and then also medical, dental, vision, and all benefits for all employees. And I made a comment, I believe, to Mrs. Braden. I thought we had a really bad year from our medical perspective. Our claims were higher than years before. But when we pulled it all together from a budgetary format, you can see there was reduced expenses from the retirement. We didn't pay the salary, so consequently the retirement tax wasn't charged. So there was some savings there, but a lot of that came back to our benefits and our medical, while being high, not being higher than what we had budgeted. So still within those line items, and don't really anticipate too much of a jump since we were able to recognize that this year. We should be able to stay with our normal 8 to 10% increase or anticipated increase in our medical costs. Just going to hit some of the areas that were kind of out of whack from a budgetary standpoint or has a larger difference from actual and budgeted. So the next one is professional services. That was over budget by approximately $680,000. Most of that, over $550,000 of that, were due to additional services or placements of students with special needs. The way that, at least since I've been business manager here with the district, when we are pulling our special education budget together, we are focused on the students that we know that we have currently and what their placements will be or what they might need to be or services that they need. But we do not build in much of anything for future students. I view that as what is our fund balance is for. So that if we do need those additional services, just because we haven't budgeted for it, we do not say, no, you can't have that service. The students go have it, get what they need. And if we need to, we would step into our fund balance to pull those additional funds. I don't feel that it's fruitful to not necessarily inflate the budget, but try to guess what students may be coming to us and what services those students may need, because it is truly all over the map. We'll take from this learning experience and once again, for next year, budget for those students that we have and the services we believe or know that they are going to need into next year. But that's that area. 500 to and from other services. The major players in this area are transportation and tuition, specifically cyber school tuition. You can see that it was about $100,000 over budget. This was really driven a lot by transportation. We did not finalize our transportation contract for the 23-24 school year until after our budget was done, due to some of the things we were doing to help at the time AP Bucks continue to be in business, and bring ourselves up to the market value of what transportation really costs. We were increasing costs there. We also started, it's funny that this seems so long ago, but we also started that 23-24 school year with not enough bus drivers. If you remember, you may have received communications from Dr. Kepler asking people if they were interested to seek out, qualifications to become a bus driver because we were short. We had to pay for additional services and do something creative in that we paid for subs for bus drivers. That was to ensure that the sub was going to serve and be with Palmyra Area School District. That was a result of our need to go out we use Boyo transportation to help supplement some of the things Bucks couldn't help us with. Boyo serves many schools. So we went from using Bucks, who we were solely they were our sole provider, to using Boyo, and then being in competition. So to make sure that we had subs and could continue transportation on a consistent basis, we did some creative things there as well. 600 supplies, $235,000 over budget. Much of this, or most of that, included there was $127,000 that was approved by the board so that we could purchase science curriculum early in the year, so that the staff and everybody would have that to work with over the summer. It was already an item we were going to purchase out of our 24-25 budget, but the board was okay purchasing that earlier to get all that information into the individual's hands. We also, this was another item, we learned about the safety and security grant that the state passed after we passed our own budget. So a lot of the things we bought were supplies for that safety grant, and forced that item once again to be over budget. And finally, the 900 level debt service. The overage there, if you remember, we transferred additional money to our capital projects fund to address the fire systems here at the high school and also at Pine Street Elementary. So those are the direct reasons why those over. Revenue, conversely, as has happened the last couple of years, has remained strong. Local revenue, you can see we received about 1.3 million more than budgeted. Most of that comes down to our interest income that has really been driving a revenue stream for us that had been, pretty much dormant or flat up till last year. So being conservative in budgeting for that, we're going to be a little bit more aggressive this time through for next year's budget. However, once again, I would note that the rates have been, the Fed has lowered the rates once since our budget has been passed, and my understanding is that may continue. But I still think it's going to be we're going to be in a great rate environment from that process. projecting that the rate probably will only drop down to around 4%. We're a little over 5 right now in what we're getting back on our money. So I still think it's going to be a good revenue generator for us. And then the other one is real estate, delinquent real estate taxes. Those have been stronger collections over the last 2 years, and I think shown that they have shown to me that that collection is a trend. So we'll also be updating that in our next budget or budget for next year to account for that trend in additional funds coming in.
So I had a question about that. I saw it in the narrative piece. So wouldn't there be a point where they're caught up? Right, if you're delinquent, let's say I didn't pay my school tax 2 years ago, right, and then I paid it maybe this past year or 3 years ago, and I paid it last year.
What normally happens with those, Mr. Laudermilk, is your property is not at stake as long as you have less than 3 years of property taxes that you owe. So many people, and it's why some of the information is consistent at the end. Just let their taxes go delinquent. That way you can set up a payment plan, pay those taxes back. But it might be a year and a half that someone's taking to pay back that year's bill. So if they're always doing that in that cycle, if that's how they pay their real estate tax bill, no, they won't get caught up. And what we see most of the time is a large majority of those that are letting their tax bills go delinquent are the same individuals year after year.
Right, that would make sense.
So we can expect delinquencies to remain pretty consistent, and they have been in the past, right?
Right. Moving on to the state revenue, this was another item where thankfully the state provided us more revenue, but unfortunately didn't provide us much communication that would be coming, and so we didn't know about that additional revenue until July, and we already approved our budget in June. As an aside to that, I'm part of our legislative committee of PASBO and had the conversation today about how it used to be with prior governors and even Wolf that you would get a little insight into what the negotiations were at the state level and try to make your own determination of where you think those numbers are going to fall. And it was noted that Governor Shapiro has changed that pretty drastically in that he'll make his presentation as is regularly done by the governor in February, but then very little information is shared publicly about what's going on with the negotiations. Maybe some of that does help get the negotiations to an end, and we're definitely appreciative of the additional funds we received this year, just hoping that there's a little bit better communication from the state so that we can plan for those funds in our budget instead of reacting. That was one of the things one of the representatives kind of pushed back on was, look at all these school districts. They still raise their taxes after we gave them all this adequacy funding. Yeah, because you didn't let us know you were giving us the adequacy funding until after we raised the taxes. So those things that we constantly still try to wrestle with at the legislative level, that we do need more state funding and that we are using it for good and appropriate things.
That said, can we expect that to be the floor moving forward?
What we're being told, yes. However, that has not been codified or provided in any legal way in code or writing. So the short answer is yes, that's what we should plan on. They also could yank the rug out from underneath us because there's nothing in code right now that says that has to be the base. But what we're being communicated with is that we should understand that is our new base. But we also should not anticipate that we're going to get that much more money again this next year. Okay. At this point in time anyway. Federal revenue, the increase there was really just our ESSER funds. We were done spending those, and it was just a process of when those funds got spent in what fiscal year. So as we were budgeting for 24-25, we had certain anticipations of what we were going to spend in 23-24, or I'm sorry, 22-23, and those move forward moving from here. But ESSER funds, the district has expended all of our ESSER funds as of June 30th of 2024. That is no longer there. I couldn't be happier about that. Tim as well. Other revenue, that is just our sale of fixed assets. We did not have an end of a lease. Mostly that's what we do is sell our Apple products at the end of the lease. We didn't have a lease ending, so that was much lower than in years prior. All of that together notes that our revenue was above our expenses by about $2.4 million. Rolling that through the fund balance, you can see that adding that into the fund balance that we already have right now would end up in a fund balance of $10.9 million in the general fund. We are recommending to transfer the 2.46 over to the capital projects fund to bring our general fund balance back down to 8.4 million, which is exactly what it was June 30th of 2023. Also to bring to your attention, and you'll get more information on some presentations from our technology department on some infrastructure needs. But one thing that, as we go through audits, there's some things sometimes that auditors will bring up and say, we're not concerned about this now, but you might want to get this cleaned up in the future. Going to have to make this change moving forward. Historically, we've used our capital projects fund and any stream and use that specifically sometimes for technology infrastructure needs. School code and our legislature, as they would be, cloud things. So if I have infrastructure technology needs that are part of a building project, if I'm doing something else, I can use capital project funds. Technically, if I'm only implementing or improving the technology infrastructure, I should not be using capital project funds. So to identify that, and once again, some needs that I know that will be presented here in the future, just looking to assign our current general fund balance of $1 million to that technology infrastructure so that we wouldn't move that money over to be out so we stay in compliance with school code. But also note that we're going to have this need. It's a one-time need. We don't want to really include that in our budgetary process when we go forward. So we would use fund balance to note for that. And as I note on there, last year it was noted as assigned for future personnel needs. We were in the midst of some of the teacher contracts and really just wanting to get, once again, putting money aside if we would have needed it for certain things. We also had planned to move all of that money over to pay for the pool, or not for the pool, I'm sorry, for all of the fire suppression systems. Our fiscal year ended in a way where we had enough money to already cover that, so it wasn't a need to dip into the fund balance. I went over a lot of information there. Is there any questions, comments? And we can also circle back to this if there's things you'd like to hear me or see it expanded on as well.
I just had a quick question about your the 8,426,000, the same fund balance as of 6/30/2023.
Yep.
So I was looking back in the early budget document, trying to find that number. I don't remember I was finding was different. So I was just curious where I was able to find that.
So that is in our audit report as of June 30th, 2023. Showing, as the fund balance. Things you might not have seen in there, Mrs. Martin. So the noted at the top, restricted for student activity funds. That's really a reporting requirement. That money isn't ours; it's the students. It's sitting there in our fund to make sure that it can be carried forward. That probably would not be something you would see in our budget documents, just because it's funds that aren't really there and available. I don't know if some of the others may have. It may also just be focusing sometimes on the unassigned fund balance, because that's really the fund balance of it doesn't have any specific need or purpose right now. It is that safety net for us, used when the state doesn't pass their budget on time, which has happened a couple of times in the last decade, and just other things that may arise that help us make decisions in a more timely manner. We'll be looking at some more numbers next meeting. Looking forward instead of looking back. Thank you.
Great. Any additional comments on that? All right, thank you, Mr. Friend. The third item on the agenda, Lebanon County Consortium Amendment.
So we have a Lebanon County Special Education Consortium. Essentially, it's all of the districts working together to share our special education spaces that we may have. I'm not exactly sure when, I believe, I guess maybe in 2020. I'm not sure how long ago this was originally adopted, the 2021.
I think it was around.
The districts then took a step further and said, school code says that if I'm providing services to a student outside of our district, it gives me a process of how I'm supposed to calculate the costs that I charge back to the other district. And that can be greatly, that can fluctuate greatly from district to district. To help everybody from a budgetary standpoint, the districts in the consortium agreed to develop pricing that we would all agree upon. And so any of the services that we may provide to Cornwall Lebanon or Anvil may provide to us are billed according to this document. The last year of this document, it ended June 30th of 2024. This is just updating it to bring it into moving it forward, which is why it's an amendment and we're only amending those costs. They've just also been increased by the index. That's what we've agreed to as we move forward, that we had a basis of what those costs are. If you can scroll, I think the whole way to the bottom is what this is really what's being amended is how much we're charging each other, really, so those costs can fluctuate from year to year. And this agreement would go through the 26, 27 fiscal year.
Do we spend more than we receive?
Yes. And part of that's because we use our space for our own students. We don't have a lot of other room to bring other students in. Fortunately or unfortunately, as districts move through and hire staff, that's really what helps other districts. That a district may have a lot of students that need autistic support moving out at the same time. So they have the staff, they have everybody there, but they might not have a full load of kids coming up back through. So they can say, hey, I have some spots available. Anybody need to place a student with these specialty needs? I have room for them here. So that's really what these help for. It's not a money-making opportunity. It's really just helping each other out from a service perspective.
Very good. Any additional comments on that? All right, that would move us into public comment. Mr. and Mrs. Klee?
In regards to the consortium, I go, when was it, number one, when was it created? Okay, yes. And what, when it was being created or before it was created, was any thought given to utilizing the IU13 grouping, okay, to make whatever this consortium is making work, to make it work through the IU13, and what were the advantages of creating a consortium for just making this happen this way, as opposed to working through the IU13? Sure.
So once again, I believe the original agreement was from 2021, and we're still using the IU. This is not going around them. This is just providing another set of opportunities for placements of our students that have needs. We are experiencing the last couple of years that it's harder and harder to find placements for students that have some needs. And so the more places we have the ability to do that, the better it is for students. So, these consortiums are not uncommon from that standpoint. In regionally, obviously Lebanon County, we're close together. So it makes sense for us to be able to share some of those resources. Some of that, once again, being our closeness. If a student needs to go to Southern Lancaster County for their services, that student might be on a bus for an hour and a half. So it's obviously always better if those services can be provided closer to their home, closer to where they are, so that we can spend more time on education and not more time on transportation. So this is not in lieu of the IU. It's just an additional ability to have placement, as well as taking advantage of other districts who have resources in place, may not be able to use them fully. I think we're all helping each other be as efficient as we possibly can. Sure.
else it was on the. Great, that concludes finance.
Staffing administration, and we have the two board policies.
Simple as saying no update since you reviewed in committee and had a first approval in the second October meeting.
Okay, great. And we have a couple, actually three middle school clubs.
Yes, we have Magic the Gathering Card Club, kind of going in hand with some Dungeons and Dragons and things. Mr. Francina is going to be the advisor of that club. We also have a crochet club for students that may be interested in learning crochet. Again, it will meet once a week on Thursdays when there's school in session. And then the third club is the Fellowship for Christian Athletes club. And that is going to be for any student that is interested in doing some athletic type things with a Christian-like attitude and to have fun.
Okay.
And it's anyone in the middle school is able to be a member.
Okay, Lebanon County Career and Technology Programs Enrollment.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. I'll take this one. So three main data points for you. On our website, we have our course catalog. This is current year. Just wanted to highlight that to you. I'll show you programs here without going through that document in detail, but wanted to make sure you saw where some of this data and more specifics about CTC programs is available. The data points that I want to share with the board tonight is you can see how allocations of seats are made in the founding documents or letters of agreement at the CTC. It's based on enrollment in the 10th, 11th, and 12th grade home schools from the previous year. What you see before you is the calculation of seats as we prepare, if I'm not mistaken, this is for next year. These are the 2025-2026 seat allocations. So for Palmyra, in the far right column, a CTC program that has 40 total seats available, we get 8 of the 40 based on our enrollment we comprise of just under 20% of county student enrollment in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Okay. A program that has 20 total seats available, Palmyra students get 4 of those. 18 seats gets 4, 14 seat program gets 3, and a 12 seat program gets 2. Okay? Based on enrollment in the home school. So what does that mean? If we look at CTC data here. So here are the programs. That's why I didn't go through the course catalog with you. You can see the programs on the left that our students in Lebanon County have available to them. From auto body, automotive, carpentry, commercial art, cosmetology, culinary arts, dental, diesel, electrical, electromechanical, health careers, landscape horticulture, law enforcement, masonry media, medical assistant, networking, pastry arts, plumbing, HVAC, precision machining, sports therapy, and welding. And again, you see total seats available for each of those programs to give you a perspective for each one. And then what are the seats available for Palmyra? The board also asked, and this is a county-wide number. So I'll just pick one here, and I'll pick probably what's the toughest one. Cosmetology program has 12 seats available. We get 2. This is current year numbers. 52 students in Lebanon County were turned away from cosmetology because there's only 12 seats available. Those aren't Palmyra numbers; those are county-wide. But if I should have totaled that, but say 100 students plus, wanted a vocational education and couldn't have access to it. A, facility isn't large enough. So if you had a larger facility, great, now we need to staff it, et cetera. So it just shows you the demand for CTE or career technical education based needs. Automotive is a challenge every year with seat competitiveness, diesel, electrical. And talk about 11 students that had an interest in law enforcement didn't go this year. And we talk about the demand and need for law enforcement officials.
Dr. Kepler, do you know how many of those are like, or I mean, rough guess of like our Palmyra students, or?
I'd have to look further into that to identify that. We typically have trends and we jockey around. It's bartering. You know, if Elko needs an extra spot in auto body and we have a seat that we're not filling, you know, hey, we'll give you an auto body if you give us a dental. So we barter back and forth so to get our kids.
How is it determined who goes and who doesn't?
The CTC has criteria. So first, our high school administration and counselors work through with our students, and they're set basically a rubric. Attendance, grades, and their performance to date is part of that review process. And then that's kind of the deciding factor. And I talked to a parent last year, just looking at attendance, and that competitiveness, if a student missed one more day of school, that calculation could have swung and they wouldn't have gotten the seat. But they got that seat because they had good attendance.
You can say who the parent was. It was me. Believe me, that's been like a very sore subject in our house. Our normal winter vacation cannot happen because of that seat placement, which I was unaware of until that was a thing. I just have one on this. Dave, do they address this at all? Because I think that sheet right there, if you could get that for the last 3 or 4 years, I think that would be that should drive their feasibility study. Is the fact that 100 kids, 200, whatever it may be. I think that's the problem is we're essentially forcing that group of kids to go to college, which I'm not saying going to college is a bad thing, but if they are wanting a vocational thing, that's a huge.
It is a primary driver of conversation around the feasibility study. I would say the sentiment of the board is to how do we manage enlarging that building so that this number approaches 0, right? Because my thought is, you've got kids here at the high school who are going to enter the workforce, right? They're not going to take a CTC path or college. You got the kids who are going to go to college, and then you can have a trade or some type of skill here, and to get to 11th grade and be like, hey, sorry, there's no seat for you, and have them come here to a building where they're not really getting.
They're not engaged, right?
They're not engaged. So I think that's going to be a driver. The best thing about the feasibility study in what they had so far and kind of the building walkthrough and what they think they can do is they organize the wings of the building to put like services together. So you wouldn't have your diesel in one end of the building, you wouldn't have your auto body in another end of the building, and you've got you get no synergy or efficiency from that. So there's going to be a lot of talk about moving programs from one part of the building to another part of the building, enlarging that up so they can get more kids in it because that makes sense. But it's as you look at the heat map of the VOTEC now, they're doing the best they can with what they have, which is terribly inefficient, right? And so is that building was built in the 60s. My grandfather was actually involved in that project. So it's that old, and they just keep bolting on and on to it in places they want. It doesn't make any sense. So there's going to be a lot of conversations as to what's right for the VOTEC. When I found out, I just assumed if you wanted to go to the VOTEC, you went.
I kind of thought.
And then I was in the second meeting. They're like, "Oh no, we have 200 kids a year that don't come here." And I thought that's crazy. We're supposed to provide an education to every kid in the Commonwealth. If this is your path, then this is your path. Like the reporting, the sending schools should get together and make that.
are all of these programs 5 days a week or 3 days or?
They're 5 days a week. Some programs are half day. As a junior, you typically go in the morning, and then your senior year, you go in the afternoon, and your other half a day is here in the homeschool. Other programs, and they're moving more and more programs to a senior only program, full day senior year.
Well, the reason I ask is, do all of these programs require space at the CTC? Like, I know you can't be moving ovens and stuff around, but like the law enforcement and all that, is space there required, or is there a way to have the instructor actually rotate to accommodate kids? I mean, I'm just throwing
Anything's a
stuff out.
possibility. There is a no compete clause in the letters of agreement. So we couldn't just say, Palmyra, we're not interested in CTC. We're going to start our own auto body program and cut you out. Could you massage that and say, you have 18 seats available. We're turning kids away. We want to do a program of our own to capitalize on that. That's possible, I'm sure.
Thank you.
So procedural question on this. So the Career Technology Board is working on reorganization, they're working on expansion, but that has to come back to the local boards to approve it.
It does, because it's
Now,
gonna be an
here's my question. If you come back to the local boards and ask for approval of expansion, does it have to be unanimous? Do we have to get every board in the county to agree to that in order to move forward? I'm just wondering how this works,
I would have to look at that answer.
The bylaws would tell you probably.
because what if one or two
Varies.
boards would say no and the rest would say yes? What repercussions and how do we deal with that? I'm just looking down the
Sure.
future.
I will seek that answer and make sure the board has that. But I think it was requested that we share some of that data. Wanted to have it before you tonight. You want us to keep going, Mr. Gabb?
Oh, sorry. Got so involved in the
Situation there.
Oh, yeah, we're getting closer. Okay. The Hershey Christian Academy Girls Wrestling Co-op.
So I asked Mr. Weidler to join us tonight and talk a little bit about co-op agreements in general and interscholastic athletics, and then specifically what the request is here that Palmyra Area School District partner with Hershey Christian in the realm of girls wrestling. So, Mr. Weidler, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. I was actually poised to be here in the October meeting, but our girls soccer team had a major upset. We ended up hosting a playoff game. So I would like to introduce some representatives that we have here from Hershey Christian tonight. They have their athletic director, Tyler Cunningham, Rebecca Manny, and Kim Hampshire serve on their board of directors. Okay, so they're here in support and possibly answer any questions. So I believe you have my summary proposal in front of you. Hershey Christian Academy is located about 7 miles from PSD in Dauphin County. The Pennsylvania Interscholastic Athletic Association, or PIAA, allows schools to form cooperative sponsorship agreements to offer opportunities for kids with an emphasis on small schools who may not be able to sustain a team sport. And with an enrollment of only 21 female students at HCA, I'm going to call them from here on out, in grades 7 through 12, well, obviously it's hard to sustain a team sport with that kind of enrollment. So spearheaded by Mrs. Manny, they went through the PIAA approval process, completed all the approvals there to give them an opportunity to explore opportunities for their enrolled kids. I am here. I am excited about this to propose a formal sponsorship agreement with Hershey Christian in the sport of girls wrestling. Our girls wrestling program, slow growth. Okay, slow growth right now. We would welcome newcomers into our program right now.
So practices would be at Palmyra?
Yeah,
All transportation would be the responsibility of the HCA athlete to get here, to practice. They would get here and then travel with our team to any away competitions. You see there the insurance requirements for Hershey Christian Academy. Our responsibilities, one of the factors that we consider when we would consider a co-op is we have to look at the other schools' enrollment compared to ours. And is when you do classifications, are they AA, are they AAA? We have to take that enrollment and add it to ours. There's no change here. Would still remain AAA girls wrestling.
right.
So there's no impact to us having to wrestle a higher classification. Our responsibilities would be, again, they're wrestling for us. The wrestlers, just like our athletes, provide their own clothing, shoes, and headgear. We would provide singlets. Or if one of our athletes has provided something from the school, the Hershey Christian student athlete would receive the same from us under that cooperative sponsorship. And again, if we're paying tournament fees, they would be part of our team. It's one fee for a team. We would cover those costs. And then just to make it clear, it's our event. So if we're hosting an event, it's our gate receipt for any tickets sold or things of that nature. And it would be our board approved staff as well. Our high school principal and athletic director assume responsibility of the day-to-day operations for not only our athletes, but the student athletes coming from Hershey Christian as well. So we, again, with total enrollment of 21 students, we expect 2 female student athletes desiring to compete, and our recommendation is we welcome them and give them that opportunity.
Very good. That answers all my questions. How many other co-op agreements do we have?
We are in a co-op, but we are the sending school. We are not the host school for bowling with Northern Lebanon.
I just found out about that. I had no
Yeah.
idea we had a bowling team.
Yeah.
So is this so it's similar, but we're on the opposite end?
Correct. Correct.
And that's
There's
the only other one we have here?
pardon?
Is that the only other co-op?
It is. Yeah.
They're historically very good too, so that's good for our kids, right? Tagging on to a winning team. I assume that this agreement is a standard and generally accepted template.
Yeah, I need to start with approval from this board, and then I need to go to District 3 yet and get approval from them.
Okay.
So approval would not be tonight, I don't believe, or
No, our intent would be, we would have a motion for you simply to approve a cooperative agreement for with Hershey Christian Academy for girls wrestling, both junior high school and high school programs.
Do you anticipate any? Will this be in effect for this season?
yes, yes,
Do you anticipate any coming?
yes, they went through that approval with PIA.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I welcome the growth, so that's excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wadler. So we'll have this as a motion next Thursday, and then that'll allow Mr. Wadler and HCA to continue working with District 3. Okay, thank you.
Okay, number 5 is enrollment update, Pell study.
So I'm going to open the first document. There are 2 lengthier documents there for you. The Pell study I put there as reference from 2021, and there is the PDE study, which is hundreds and hundreds of pages. I'll reference the data that I transposed into this historical enrollment data. So Palmyra Area School District at large, from 2008-9 on through, you see what we all saw over the years, enrollment growth. That's the year that I moved 3 children to Palmyra in 2008. And you see that enrollment growth. We reached our peak in 1920 and we're showing a slight decline district-wide. However, we still have that bubble. At our high school, our largest enrollment was last school year with multiple grade levels, over 300 students per grade. That would have been in the 23-24 school year, albeit in elementary numbers were down at that time. So one of the biggest things I think we look at is the data that we've sought and PDE provided an accurate forecast? So if you look at in 2021, we paid $11,000 as a school district for the Pennsylvania Economy League to provide an update to a 2017 study. It wasn't a full study, simply a review and update of their numbers. At that time, they projected we would have 3,548 students in 2022, 2023. We had 3,535. So we had 13 less students than their projections in that year. Last year, we had 6 more students than what they projected. And as of the time of this report, approximately a week and a half ago, we have 2 less students than they projected. You take that over 13 grade levels, kindergarten through 12th grade, that's quite accurate. That's pretty precise study. And you can see that study, I put on there the 26-27 projection. So they're showing us declining, which is what we're witnessing on a day-to-day basis. PDE in a much longer report, because it's every school district in the Commonwealth, I reference, it's attached there for you, 525, page 525 represents PDE and what they were suggesting for us. Again, for current year, they projected 34. We actually have 21 more students than they projected, and then we'll see how accurate they were. They had a, I'll say, more aggressive in terms of estimated decline of enrollment. Kind of falls in line with what we're seeing with kindergarten. The last check, it had an increase of 5 kindergartners. We were at 197 there the last time I referred to our child registration team. So for what it's worth, we do see declining enrollment, even with the housing market. We'll see what that has to bear. But this is important data as you, the board, engage with RLPS over the next, from February, March, and April in scope of construction. What we're forecasting for the kids that are coming in kindergarten, when they come into the high school in 10 years, what are our needs? What will that group look like? So we'll keep this data at the forefront as we enter those discussions.
Forgive me, you may have referenced this in the past, but do we ever see a jump from kindergarten enrollment to first grade enrollment for students who maybe sought a full day kindergarten program elsewhere?
We do. It has been a pretty standard growth on an annual basis. Off the top of my head, 6, 8, 10 students at the most. So it's not a significant number that would alter that greatly.
Okay, thank you.
And again, this kindergarten group, we knew, according to the Pell study, live birth rate 5 years ago was 25 births less than the years before it and immediately following it. So we knew this year would be a lower number. We didn't expect in the 190s, but we expected to go up 15, 20 kids in next year's kindergarten, just based on live births, but to be determined.
Okay, thank you. Okay, public comment? Okay, then, sorry.
Just a comment, for things like the presentation about the Hershey Christian Academy, is there any way to move that to the beginning of the meeting? Because 4 people sat through this whole thing for 2 minutes of a presentation and introduction.
And we shared with them, we have board policy dictates the flow of our meetings and the committee structure. So
it is unfortunate.
Painful.
They had to consider all our finances and
what's not bad, Mrs. Massar, do you know what my prediction? I told them, I estimated it would be about 8 o'clock when we got there. So that was pretty close.
And they still came.
And they came early.
Okay.
But they're leaving with a positive statement, so, what can I say? Anything else? That's not the first time I've said, can't we move things around?
Okay.
But we can't.
All right.
Okay, so we have an announcement of executive session.
The board will meet in executive session immediately following tonight's meeting for updates and discussion regarding a confidential personnel matter and for student matters confidential under FERPA. 5 minutes.
5 minutes.